Yeah, there we go. And it's recording. Hi, folks. Let me just tweak the camera. That's good. Maybe like that. And so here we go again to another meeting. Now, do you guys know how to use the chat? If you hover at the bottom with your cursor, you'll see a little thing that says chat, and click it. It should open a panel on your right. And if it does, you'll probably be able to see this. I'm just going to type this. The reason is, I want to get more of a dialogue going, and you can ask me stuff or point me in certain directions. And I'd love to be guided that way, but you have to use the equipment. Could any of you just click on the chat and send me a message? It'd be very comforting to know there's somebody there that would actually ask questions if you had any. One of the things that I'm finding very difficult with this program is lack of feedback. Michael, I think, has been to every single event, so I'm presuming he's getting worth or wants to get worth and thinks he's still in with a chance. But for others, I don't know. From all the dozens of people who've opted into the program, nobody seems. Well, let me undo this button. I don't think that's very comfortable. Oh, Aurora's just come on. Aurora, hello, my darling. I meant to call you. Now, listen, trust me. Here is a card with your number on it. I'm just showing you. I'm not faking it. You're in Azusa, right? And your number starts with 626. I do want to call you and talk to you. What you said last time was very empowering and interesting, I thought. I just wanted to know more. Okay, so nobody chatting? Anyone? Anyone? Well, of course, I suppose. I'm just going to say, wait a minute. No, I'll tell you what, let's go through some names. Aurora, I'm just going to promote you that you can talk to me. Do you want to do that? I mean, this might not work so well. People might find it embarrassing. I did it with one man once, and he didn't have any clothes on. It was a very hot night in Canada, and I promoted him to a panelist without asking if that was appropriate, and of course it wasn't really. Do you want to say something, Aurora? Or maybe this is not a good direction at all. Yeah, okay, maybe not. Oh, hang on, you're on a mute. Right, there we go. Can you say something, Aurora? Are you okay? Nope. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to back up because this might not be working. I'm going to mute you again, Aurora. You can speak if you want, but please, I think there's a way of raising your hand, if you know what that means, so that I see a sort of on the side panel that I know somebody wants to talk. But it's probably a bit dangerous promoting anyone in case the surroundings in the background aren't that convenient. I do understand. Okay, so I've got gallery view. What I really want is this view, I think. So if I take you, I'm thinking of the final recording, Aurora, so I've actually taken you off since you didn't seem to want to respond. Maybe you didn't have your mic set up, maybe you didn't want to, and I was being a bit presumptuous and so on. Anyway, so here we go. This is yet another meeting, and it's your new life in a box. And I want to emphasize something here, and I want you to look out for something too. I have been going through a number of transitions and talking with people, and I've evolved a program that I very much want to do with the people who subscribe on my list. Now, we are an older demographic. That doesn't mean there aren't any youngsters and teenagers. There are. I get letters, but the overwhelming majority are 50 and beyond, and quite a lot of you beyond 60. In that, what we call that third age of life, And I'm very passionate about solving, if that's the right word, but about bringing forth, as it were, ideas that I've got on the subject of love and connectivity and togetherness. And I'm putting together a workshop at the house. You can come to the house. This is, we're not going to hire a hotel and charge a bunch of money. You just come and visit with me for a couple of days. You all have to come at the same time, of course. I can't repeat it. But, come to the house for a couple of days. There's some very nice, very inexpensive hotels nearby. And we come to the house and meet together. The only thing you'd have to do is contribute something for the food and stuff. So I want to actually run a workshop here. And the theme of this is really healing love. In fact, I could give it a jokey title, I suppose, of saying it's never too late. However much of a struggle you've had, however many times you've loved and lost, it can be healed. So maybe I would give it this title of healing. Now, I won't say healing the love of a lifetime, because that has a meaning, doesn't it? Love of a lifetime generally means the one person, the person that most did it for you, whether he or she survived, they're still with you, or whatever. But I'm phrasing it very carefully as healing a lifetime of love, because we all love. We like to love. We generally mess it up, as you know, but sometimes we get it right, and it's rather wonderful when we do. But the point is, there's huge amounts of healing to be had there. And that's something that I very, very much want people to have if they're on the New Life in a Box program. I mean, I would say you don't even have to be on it to be able to come to this workshop. But this is what I'm going to be telling people. I have techniques, and you've seen some of them in this book, the tool book that I have. There's quite a few in there, actually. The freedom tools could work. The constellation of a chord, understanding, healing communication. Listen, I tried it with one lady using the private soliloquy idea. I had to stand in front of a mirror and say to every man that she could remember that had been unkind to her or not treated her as beautiful and wise and a goddess, say to them in the mirror, "You dope, you missed out, look at me, I'm wonderful, and you dummy, you screwed it up," or whatever. Whatever she wanted to say. I wasn't there. I told her what to do, but obviously it was private. But you see what I'm saying, that you don't have to ring up all your old boyfriends and say you were a jerk. All you need to do is picture them there in your mind's eye, speaking in a mirror, and present yourself as a very powerful, very capable, loving person, and that it was their problem. They missed out, not that, oh my God, I'm so upset that you're gone. It's like, well, I hope you're upset that I'm gone, because I was an amazing person that you had in your life and you blew it. That's just one of the things. There's the 4 magic questions, which is the last chapter in the book. I don't know if you've read that far. I really hope that everyone has read to the end and probably read all the materials, basically, one way or the other. Of course, there's the closeness in love healing, healing the me I see in you. There are lots of things we can do. So I think by the end of a good weekend of this, Friday night through Sunday afternoon when everyone has to leave, we could do some really good work. Yes, I expect we'd see some heartache surface, some broken hearts and a bit of tears and so on. But I'm talking about healing. I've used these things for years now, and they heal. Things change. And you can have a position with a person where they can't even speak to you. They so despise you and get so angry and ratty and and yet it heals, within a matter of days or weeks. The person comes on again. They're very loving and something seems to blow. The beautiful thing is that you can actually do it with people who are not there. They don't have to show up in your life for you to heal. In fact, people can be dead. They could have gone. We have a thing we call identity dialogue, where we imagine a conversation with a person. Now, you can guess how healing. This is going to be you put this person imaginary in a chair in front of you, then talk to them and think of all the things you wish you'd said. It's really sad the way people leave it till the kind of deathbed scene, or they miss it altogether. You know, the person is suddenly dead and gone, and it's, oh my God, I wished I had just said the one thing I wanted this person to know. I loved them despite everything, or whatever the message is. Well, you know, it works 99% as well if you just say it anyway. You know, they're not there to listen, but you say it, because this is one of the things that I teach in Supernoetics, and it goes back a long way. I'm thinking of a man called Wendell Johnson, who wrote a book, You Are Your Most Enchanted Listener. I'll say that again and think about it slowly. You are your most enchanted listener. Who is most influenced by what you say? The people you're talking to? No. You are. So what you say is terrifically powerful, and that's why that speaking to yourself in a mirror or private soliloquy is so important. So actually the person listening to what you're saying isn't as healing for you as you saying it anyway. And like I said, the person doesn't need to cooperate. They don't need to be there. But, you know, over the last 30 odd years, I've seen so many miracles. You know, I did this on my first wife and a long-time ex-girlfriend. You know, I mean, I'm in my 70s. I've had a lot of women. 2 I was married to. In between times, there were some. Before I got married, there were some. But I did this kind of healing on 2 people. And, you know, they both called me the next morning. Neither of them had spoken to me for years. One, nearly 10 years. Never spoke to me. Nothing. I could have been dead for all they knew. And yet the next morning, they got the impulse to call me. I mean, it was almost kind of creepy, you know, except that it's wonderful. And that's how spirit and mind and power works. It seems magic. Wendell Johnson, by the way, is very good. I've quoted him. I don't think it's in the tool book, but I've quoted him in some of my other works on Supernoetics. Gave a very good definition of magic. He said, and I quoted it, no process. That's what magic means, okay? There's no process. If there is a process and you understand it, it's not magic, okay? If you send a man's voice or a woman's voice round the world and you can hear it in Sydney, Australia, say, well, that's magic, unless you know about radio waves and radios and tuners and condensers. And then once you understand the process, you realize that's a radio transmission. So it's not magic anymore. But, you know, 200 years ago, it would have been total magic to not just a native person, but to anyone, even in the civilized world. They wouldn't have been able to get their heads around it. So that's what magic means. So that was Wendell Johnson's definition of magic. There's no process. And we really don't know why, if we put our thoughts and our spiritual energies and powers out into the cosmos there, it affects other people. We just know it does. And in fact, you can heal people this way. That's one of, it's not on this sort of basic course, you know, your life in a box course, but we have basic simple training where you can heal a person that doesn't even need to know you're doing it. Now, I'm not just thinking about intercessory prayer. You probably heard of that. You know, someone's in hospital dying and a bunch of people hundreds of miles away can get together and pray for that person and there will be a change. That's not what I'm thinking of. I'm going a bit beyond that. What I'm thinking of, you creating dynamics and change in the person's psychic space. By shifting stuff around in your head, you'll shift it around in their head. Now, I went many years without speaking to my first wife. Bless her, she was, you know, very angry and upset. Eventually, she became filled with angst, you know, about what she'd done. She walked out with this guy. Well, eventually the guy walked out on her. These things always happen. You know, why you would trust anybody that's persuading you to cheat on your spouse, it's nuts, because if that person is in that dynamic, that mode, they're probably going to do it to you. And that's exactly what happened to her. So 5 years after she left, she was all on her own, and was somehow continued to be very angry and angst-ridden with me, as if it was all my fault. I didn't ask her to leave. I was in healing mode. But anyway, what I'm leading to saying was about 5 years ago, I went through a series of really interesting psychic dynamics with this and looked at all the things that I could see in my space and her psychic space and tried to heal it. And I mean, you can do this. You can find somebody that you met this person in a past life, say, and there was a betrayal, and you got murdered, or she got murdered, or he got murdered, and then you can process that as a memonym and clear the charge off this event that's you're seeing in your psychic space, and it will change the other person, and it's really rather good. Anyway, long story short, my first wife and I were back in touch in no time. And since then, we've been very, very affectionate together. I love her very much because I loved her in the first place. I didn't ask her to leave. But, she's now healed of that and now relies on me heavily. If she needs something, she will call me. And thank God, my second wife, Vivian, is one of the most blessed creatures that's very tolerant and understanding. She's very healing, very caring. She's a Pisces. If any of you do sun signs, you'll know that Pisces are the caring ones. They're the oldest ones in the zodiac. And they care and they love others and they're very caring. There's only one snag, and that is they will care for you on their terms. So you won't necessarily get what you want, but you'll get what they want to give you. It's still good. And, entirely in the open. And we listen, not just with Vivian's blessing. My first wife came here a few months ago and stayed with us. Was it healing? Well, it wasn't tricky, let's put it that way. My first wife was glad to be here. My second wife was generous and giving and loving, as I said. I'm going off the point slightly. The point is that the healing with my first wife took place without her actually participating much. I did it in psychic space, and I actually had a supernoetics pilot work with her a little bit and do some of it in her psychic space too. So magic, well, it's magic if you don't have a process. We do know that non-material mind is infinite. The mind is a field. So if we're not just a brain. That's corny science. In fact, you don't even need a brain. I'm sure you must have seen that piece by me. The collection of several hundred people who didn't have a brain, but were effectively 1% of their brain, but they were still normal. So brain is not the thing. But science is obsessed with it and won't look at anything different. Even though people walking around without a brain are normal, they can't bring themselves to accept, well, the brain can't be the source of it. No, we're a non-material mind. That we're a field, or the mind is a field, and it stretches outwards. And of course, I don't know if you know basic physics, a field says it goes on forever, reaches the ends of the universe. Yes, it may get weaker and weaker, or at what they call attenuation, like gravity would, if gravity actually exists, which seems doubtful these days. But, the mind, it may not attenuate. So, like the quantum field, it seems to be the same at all points, no matter how far things are apart. It doesn't attenuate or weaken. But the point is, with a field, it's everywhere. There are no holes in it. You can't have a hole in gravity, if you think about it. There isn't a place where you can put a billiard ball and gravity won't touch it. Anything anywhere is affected by a field, so that's one of its important properties. And of course, if mind is a field, it's infinite and everywhere. It means everybody else's mind is infinite and everywhere, and so we're all the correct word is interpenetrating. We're all in the same space-time. We're still different minds, but everybody's mind is going through the same time and place. Oh, gosh, I'm starting to get very technical. I love talking like this, but anyway, trust me, there's some really good foundation philosophy and science behind the things that I talk about in supernoetics. But anyway, back to the point. Look out for the workshop. I believe it's perfectly possible. As I say, it's the slogan, if not the title of the workshop, will be "It's never too late." And the functional subtitle, what we're doing, basically is healing a lifetime of love. And I think it's going to be very good. Okay, so I said today we'd talk about, what did I say? Oh yes, freedom tools. Freedom tools is a term developed or invented by the man who developed the procedures, my very good friend Per Schiottz from Copenhagen, one of the world's dearest men. I think he's wonderful. He's a little older now, he's pushing 80, but he's still game and still gets around. And we're flying him over. He's going to come and stay with me for a couple of weeks in early October. So look out for that visit. There will be some magic flying off that. I want him to do one of these kind of, webinars, turn it into a workshop, possibly with a bunch of slides, and maybe that will last an hour or two instead of just a short chit chat by me. I love Per, and his ideas are really wonderful. It centers around a phenomenon that for a long time, I've called pips or pipping. A pip is a tiny person who doesn't believe that they're an infinite, vast, and infinitely powerful spiritual being, because he or she's been taught different and they bought into it. And that's the key. Nobody can make you less than you are unless you agree to it. Somebody standing next to you and saying you're a useless bunch of unworthy, I'll try and not use swear words, but the kind of monstrous person that you meet sometimes, and talking to somebody like that, it's just water off a duck's back, unless you think, oh yes, oh my goodness, yeah, you're right. The minute you do that, you cave into the other person's power, then you've lost your freedom. You've lost your viewpoint. So I think it's a very good term to call this freedom tools, because it's a very magical transformative healing that we can do for people, that we show them how to shed this, how to shake it off. And it's a lifetime of accumulation, really. Some people accumulate more than others. Some people change. So you might have a person who was pretty ballsy and bold in their childhood, and through later life, especially adult life, when girls have stood you up, people have insulted you, bosses have run you down, you failed and failed over and over at work, you can find yourself having that viewpoint that you're a pip, or you've been pipped. It can go the other way around. Pipping for children is very common. Parents do it, teachers do it, and the child grows up thinking, I'm unworthy, I'm inadequate, poor me. And this is because they bought into it. And then in later life, they say, screw all that. I'm my own person. I believe what I believe, and I know my worth. Nobody can put me down. Excuse me. I happen to be one of those. I had a paralytically paranoid, shy childhood. I couldn't believe in myself in any sense, For example, I had a dazzling voice, and I'm singing, and I can't just boast. What I can say is I made the window panes vibrate, and people talked about this amazing boy performer, singer that had this powerful, beautiful voice. Young boys have a gorgeous voice, but I was paralyzed with fright, and I just couldn't do it. I was put up to sing a solo, and I was like this. I couldn't believe that I could do it, or that anyone would listen, even if I could. When I came to get my first date with a girl, I was again just paralyzed. I couldn't bring myself to do it. And in fact, the only way I got my first date was to ask a friend to go and speak to the girl. Would you ask her if she'd even consider going out with me? Talk about caveats. Would she even consider going out with a worthless piece of nothing like me? Was probably my state of mind, you see. Now, I've got to tell you, I've shed all that. Oh my goodness, I'm one of the most cocky, arrogant, self-centered and secure people you're ever going to meet. Now, it changed. So my view of myself is now as I have huge worth. I have a mountain of knowledge that's valuable to people. I hope I live long enough to share most or all of it. And I have a different view of myself. And if some idiot stood up and said, Scott-Mumby, who's that jerk? He's a nobody. What does he know? Wouldn't deter me or alter my mentality in the least. I can no longer be pipped because I don't agree with it. By the way, this was before I met Per and took on his work. Excuse me. I still keep getting this slight guitar and my vocal cords. But anyway, before Per, but now I've worked through this with Per too, and gone over all sorts of things that maybe I missed. And it's wonderful the way we do it. You know, you spot these moments when people put you down. There's a whole procedure. I'm not going to spend valuable time now telling you. Well, perhaps you think I should, but the point is that Per is coming, and I want him to do this with you. But it's very important that people do this, and it's a sort of cleansing, getting rid of, well, if you like, toxins, you know, mental toxins or mental, like viral infection, those things. It's like healing in the physical, medical sense, getting rid of these things so that the body's cleaned. Perhaps, you know, using another medical model, perhaps we could say this is rather like what we call stealth pathogens, you know, things like the Lyme bacterium, Borrelia burgdorferi, that hides and you often don't know you've got it. All you've got is the results, which is feeling unwell mentally and fatigued and so on. Epstein-Barr is another one that lingers in the body for many years, and it's notorious for causing, say, liver cancer later in life. We call them stealth pathogens. They're sort of below the radar and the body doesn't shake them off. Well, think of this pipping phenomenon. They're similar, but it's psychic crud or psychic dust that's sitting there where, you know, you were going along. Sorry, I'm confusing myself now. I'll watch my hand instead of watching the screen. Well, you're going along and then you drop a bit and then you go along a bit and you drop a bit more. So cumulatively, you end up in a place that's really far below where you should be. All you have to do for the moment, for this talk and discussion, is just believe that you can reverse that. You know, you find each moment when you went down and reverse it. And it's actually very simple. You know, you don't need to do sacred rituals or anything, or dance in circles or shake rattles and weird stuff. All you have to do is recognize the moment and say, I repudiate this. I'm not accepting this nonsense from that person. I hereby repudiate it or disconnect from it and its effect. And it sounds really simple. I mean, it's almost absurdly simple. You think, what? How can that help? Trust me, it helps enormously. It's like going to the doctors. You know, you've got a bacteria, you go to the doctors, you pop an antibiotic, and the next thing is you don't have the sore throat anymore. Well, it's that good, you know. So when you do these steps, you clear away the unwanted mental debris and you feel different. Now, there is a chapter on this. I think it's chapter 11. I'm just going to reach for the book look. Chapter 11 of the tool book. And you should read this, really. It says, I mean, the title I gave it was No More Mr. Little Guy, or Mr. Little Gal, of course. You have to say it both ways these days. You know, I'm done with feeling small. I'm done with diminishing myself. Time for a new era. And of course, our third age, it is time. I'm willing to guess that there's a few people that have probably put you down over the years that are not even here anymore, or they're so screwed. In fact, I've just remembered a wonderful interview by a man who was a prisoner in one of the gulags in Siberia. Now, if you know the history, it must have been pretty horrible, you know, imprisoned with little food and no heating in temperatures of 50 and 60 below. People died like flies, but some survived. And I remember seeing this man interviewed that survived, you know, after perestroika. Everyone, you know, jails were thrown open and all this was put into reverse. And this guy was being interviewed, and there was one particular guard who had been really brutal and tortured him and been horrible and made his life as bad as he could. Really, really, really pipped him, because the guard was a snot, of course, who knew that the person couldn't fight back, and therefore he just became a bully, a crusher. In the interview, the TV guy said, well, how do you feel about this guy and the way he treated you? And the prisoner laughed and said, he's long dead. I'm still here. No, wasn't that good? I mean, I just laughed because that, at the end of the day, that's life, okay? You know, people that you don't like often disappear before you. In fact, there's another story like that. Maybe I've shared it with, I don't think I've shared it with you in Your Life in a Box, folks. But this is from Dr. Cora Ibarra in Reno, who's a friend of mine. And she had a case of a cancer case. So some of you be interested in this. Had cancer, and the doctor did the usual bullshit. Oh, you're only going to live 6 months. Chemo might just save your life. You need to start now. And she said, no, I don't want anything to do with that. So the doctor was very aggressive and nasty and said, okay, go ahead and die. You're not going to survive this. And the best part of the story, 30 years on, this lady was still alive. She was told by the doctor, you're going to die in 6 months. And 30 years on, she was still alive, happy, kicking. But the doctor was dead. He was long dead. So he didn't even know how to predict his own date when he was going to die, never mind trying to tell other people. So, don't listen to others. You might get the wrong message. We need information, but you don't need to buy into people's crap. And you certainly don't need to buy into insults and hurt, especially when they're deliberate. There is a kind of person that seems to like to live like that. Their life is better if they can crush and put down other people. You've got to see it as some kind of strange fear, I suppose. They're just terrified of other people and don't want them strong and powerful. So they'd rather crush them. That's their solution in life. Some do it very subtly. They just make cutting, sarcastic remarks, but very hurtful to the person. Others are real abusers. They use foul language and foul terms, and they get angry. You dirty, that kind. I don't want to dramatize it. I want to keep this video fun. But the kind of person I mean. They're out there. Their solutions, somehow they seem to be working on a screwball calculation that there's only so much freedom to go around, and therefore they want all the, as much as they can get for themselves. Nobody else is to have any. That means I come out on top. It's wrong. As Per Schiottz points out, freedom is really a qualitative thing. It's how you live. It's the circumstances you have. It's not a quantitative thing. In other words, there's not so much freedom and then I get more. That means you get less. That's all baloney. Freedom is just how you sail through life and what you accept and what you choose. And remember, one of the famous wise sayings is freedom isn't just doing what you like. Freedom is liking what you do. Now, think about that. That's very powerful. For a rebellious kind of person like, this goes back to medical school for me, but for a rebellious person like me, this is magic philosophy, poetry. Freedom is not doing what you like, which is what everybody thinks. Freedom is liking what you do. You get on with things, you live a life and you love it, and in every sense that you feel you're enjoying where you want to be. So freedom's not rationalized or rationed, I should say, sorry. There's enough to go around. Anybody can have it. So these pathetic people who are trying to diminish others so that they can have more are working on the wrong calculation, really. It's just baloney. Life just doesn't work like that. Anyway, as I said, there is a chapter on this, chapter 11. One of the sections, for example, is who would benefit from doing these freedom tools. Let me read you them and then I'll tell you, because Per wants everyone that's enrolled in the Your New Life in a Box project, he's going to personally give you classes and teach you. He wants to know that you know and fully understand what it is, how it works. You get the full benefit, whoopee, so you feel good, but you'll learn to do it for others. And if you could walk through life just doing this one thing and scattering freedom as you go, spreading seeds, broadcasting, it would be pretty wonderful. And so I think it's a beautiful gesture that he's made. He's not going to charge you anything. You just have to link up with him. You can link up at any stage, but, as I said, he's going to be here in a couple of weeks. So certainly don't let that moment pass. Make sure you're connected. Okay, so who would benefit from freedom tools? Well, really anyone who's shriveled and shrunk in their own view, I suppose. Someone where the spouse is always getting his or her own way. Whatever that person wants, they get, and you tend to give in, and you've taken the view, well, it's too much hassle to argue and so on. Never mind, I'll just let her have it or let him have it. That's a poor way to go about things, and it means you're submerging your own viewpoint. Domineering parents. Now, a lot of us have that phenomenon, and they don't have to be clever or big shots or bossy. They can be just idiots, if you like, but they get it wrong. They give you the wrong message. You're no good. You'll never amount to anything kind of wisdom. People who have to endure that, obviously you can imagine that their confidence is shaken, and they pick up psychic dirt in the way I was talking about stealth pathogens, right? If you're unhappy at school and felt bullied, now that peers are pretty bad news, actually. They have a tremendous effect on people. For decades now, I've known that it's probably more important or more impactful than parents. Sigmund Freud taught it's your mum and dad's fault. Everything that's wrong with you, it's your parents' fault. That's not true. My research makes it very clear that it's the grandparents that have the most impact. How do I know? Well, it's from doing recordings and voice patterning and seeing which parent or grandparents voice imprint appears in the person. And you'll find a person who's, when they speak and you get a recording and the voice pattern, you see the exact pattern repeating of, say, the maternal grandfather or the paternal grandmother comes out in the person's voice. They are speaking the grandparent role, not the parent, the grandparent. So that's very important anyway. But, there's no question that parents can do you a lot of damage if you allow it to happen. So, inept parents, whether not necessarily intending to hurt the child, but are either neglectful, abrupt, sometimes abusive, but that's not so commonly deliberate. I wouldn't rate myself as a brilliant parent. The trouble is nobody gets taught parenting, do we? There's no school curriculum on parenting, and yet it's probably the most important thing you could ever teach a person is how to raise a child. Happy, centered, sane, confident, and able to love and interrelate with others. How many of you out there know how to do that? I didn't know how to do that. Now I do. But I'm not a parent anymore. My youngsters are in their 50s. I missed it. I blew it. Like everybody, I blew it because I didn't know what to do. And like a lot of people, of course, you turn your attention on the grandchildren and you think, well, here's a chance to put it right. But, it's not the same. It's rather, we dote on our grandchildren because we think we're putting right all the damage we did to the children. But, not really, basically. Okay, if you were mocked or belittled while you were growing up in any sense, peers. Did I finish saying that? That the research showed quite clearly that peers are more powerful than parents. I think I forgot to complete the thought. There's even a book written about it. I can't remember the name, but it came out about 30 years ago. The real influential dynamic with kids is peer pressure rather than parental pressure. And you can kind of see it really. If mom is a ditz or father's a bully, that doesn't have as much effect on the child as not fitting with with peers at school. You're bullied or you're made to feel an idiot by the teacher and so on. These are things that have a lasting impact on you, whereas parents, you just shrug them off. Well, how many of you, just throw the iPod across the table and walk out and go to their own room? Kids are quite good at trying to handle that, but when you can't, like at school, you can't get away from it, it becomes very difficult. What about career? If at work you've been constantly made to feel little or be belittled or just criticized to the point where you start losing your confidence. You always thought you knew what you're doing, but this CEO keeps telling you, no, that's wrong, to the point where you think, gosh, maybe I don't know. Maybe I should, go back for a retread. I thought I knew this, but maybe I don't. And the same in life in general, actually. Here I've got, if your view of things is often challenged or sneered at or criticized, it does tend to weaken your resolve and make you begin to doubt yourself. We all do it. And then finally, across, there's probably hundreds, but the final one on the list, but you're involved in a relationship where the other person is belittling you in some way. Now, as I said, it may not be deliberate. The person may not be setting out to hurt you. But one of the pipping mechanisms is not the person is a bully and a swine and trying to steal your freedom, maybe just a very powerful person. For example, I'm extremely opinionated. I'm strongly opinionated. If I say to somebody, no, that's not right, I mean, it isn't right. You're wasting your time. I'm right. You're wrong. Now, to me, that's just confidence and knowledge and learning. But to the other person, that could come over as bullying, of course. So I have to be careful with my state of mind. But, you know, I'm just giving an example. Other people attack it the other way. You know, I'm no good, therefore what do I know? All I say, well, I've got a lifetime of reading. I read about 2 textbooks a week. I know what the stories that are going on out there. And, you know, trust me, if I say this is the case, it probably is, because it's based on a huge consensus. I'm not saying it's based on the fact that I'm a very clever maniac. It's based on the fact that I've picked up the knowledge and I remember it well. You know, I remember I read the book on that in 1986, somewhere, you know, it was getting on for Christmas. The book had a blue cover and it was about halfway through in the book. I read it. You know, I've got that kind of memory. It's not a photographic memory, but it's a good memory, meaning that when I've read something, I know I've read it and I keep it. Few crinkles appearing around the edge at the age of 73, but it's still a pretty good memory. But, you know, when I know I don't know, or when I know I'm not sure, I'll admit so. But if I know I'm right, I know I've read it somewhere, I know I've picked up this information, I tend to be very confident. I'm going on, but what I'm saying is that can pip people. You know, if I'm not careful, a lover or spouse could pick up on that and feel, you know, I'm asserting myself too much and I'm making nothing of them, or I'm crushing them to accept my point of view when I don't see it as my point of view. I just say, well, that's the facts. That's what it said in Encyclopedia XYZ, Volume 7. That's what it said. You know, I'm not trying to give you my point of view. The damned encyclopedia said it. Now, do you see the danger in this? You know, you're not setting out to crush a person or make them feel small. You're setting out to help them, to straighten things out. Let's get the facts straight. Yeah, this is good. But it's got this inherent danger, you know, so you have to be very careful. And that's the worry about pipping, and it's the worry about being a very confident personality. No problem if you know chapter 11. You just go through it with the person. They have to figure out all the times and moments when these kind of things happened in their life. And if you're the current spouse or leader, you know, you might find that you feature rather a lot on the list that they write. Well, you don't worry about that. That's not important. If someone thinks I pipped them 100 times, it doesn't pip me to be told that. I just say, oh, okay, well, sorry. It was, you know, I thought I was working for the good, and I'm sorry if it had that effect. But anyway, let's go through the procedure, and you can dump all that so it couldn't possibly affect you anymore. It's a version, isn't it, of if you're saying something's wrong, but it's still there, then you probably haven't got the right explanation. You know, if you understand where your pipping is coming from and it's correct, it'll go away. So harboring a grudge for years and years or decades and decades means the person's talking out the top of their head, really. They haven't got the right answer or resolution to that. If they had, it would have gone. So a person who's nominating you as one of their crushers or a pipper, these are not official terms in supernoetics, you know, we don't use those terms, but the sort of bullying dominant person, well, I mean, you could take the simplistic, you know, homespun psychology view that most of the other counselors and trainers go through. You know, well, it's up to you. That's up to your state of mind. It's up to you to change or drop that. The point is, if you get the exact moments of truth, these things will just vanish like that. And that's one of the most fundamental things that you learn in supernoetics. Truth sheds light, and when you get the truth of something, it will sort of evaporate away into the cosmos. Gone, just not there anymore. Somebody asks you about it, you say, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I used to be like that, didn't I? Gone. Okay, all right, so I want you to read this chapter carefully, And when Per comes on, make sure you've read it at least once, if not twice, because he's going to take you through a training program. It won't all be one-on-one, although he's a very careful, loving person. I'm sure if somebody can only manage Saturday afternoon, and that's the only time you can do it, he'll show up on a Saturday afternoon to do it with you. But I just want to talk about one more concept here. If you've looked at the book, you may remember these charts that surround a topic called capaciousness. And this comes from the word capacity. Something is capacious if it has a large capacity. So capaciousness is a discussion of how much capacity a person has. And if a person's state of mind is capacious, it means you can accept all points of view and all ideas. They don't have to, it's not one or the other. You don't see it in this day and age, and I'm not going to let you know my politics are tough for sure. But what it means is, let's say you're a Republican, you can understand the Democrats and you can understand their point of view. Now, we're not seeing this anymore, are we? It's gone crazy. The world is like, are Democrats too dumb to realize that they're stupid? And that kind of wording, these idiots. And the same with the Republicans. The Democrats believe that anyone who's a Republican person is by definition a criminal, psychopath, moronic, jerk, idiot, devil incarnate. And they talk like that. There's no capaciousness. The people seem to be losing the capacity to absorb other people's point of view. And that's a very sad thing. However, we want capaciousness, and running the freedom tools is one of the great ways to get there. Other people's points of view are not threatening. They're not challenging. They will not overthrow your point of view unless you let them. And back to the point I made early on, none of this stuff can do you any harm whatsoever unless you agree that it can. You have to buy into it. Then it can hurt you. But if you don't buy into it, it's just water off a duck's back, right? Now, if you're lacking capaciousness, you've got much less mind capacity in a sense. It means one or two things. You've got your own point of view. So if another point of view comes along, it will just bounce off. Don't want to know. Not interested. That's wrong. Damn Republicans, I don't care. That kind of thing, where you just reject the other point of view completely. Mechanically, it doesn't matter what they say, doesn't matter how they act, you're not interested, it's wrong, no. That means that you are resisting any other ideas. And of course, that's not going to work. You're not going to get through life very comfortably if you're going around like that. And I mean, that's something like we're seeing now in our political climate. I hate it. But the other way this can work against, if your mind is not of sufficient capacity, so let's say there's only room for one major idea or point of view or paradigm, if something comes along that challenges yours and crushes it, it sort of pushes it out of the way. So the new point of view takes over in what was your state of mind. You're now stuffed with all this other stuff that comes from somebody else. Wasn't your stuff. But, you've kind of overwhelmed it. You can see that for example, in religious conversions. A person had a point of view about life, God, the universe, and then along comes some proselytizing crusader who somehow manages to persuade the person, oh, that's bunk. We substitute all this stuff in your mind instead. How much better it would be to have or be able to absorb all points of view. I mean, how much better do you think the world would be if Christians understood the point of view of Muslims? I don't mean, killer maniacs, but what is the actual Muslim paradigm? How do they think, and why do they think that way? Or the Buddhist paradigm? These are very different. A Christian doesn't think the same way as a Buddhist. For one thing, a Christian believes there's only one God up there and we're answerable to everything, whereas a Buddhist says that there aren't any gods. You're God. We're all God. God's everywhere. This is all God. Everything. God. These are very fundamentally different points of view. So if you lack capaciousness, you can't begin to understand the other person. You either just reject it and don't want to know, or your own point of view is crushed and suffered and you're sort of overwhelmed by other people's points of view. So do you see what I'm saying? So this whole mechanism of pipping is very important to us. The freedom tools as a way to get out of this and learn to be free, literally be free of other ideas that you don't want, if you like, or not so much other ideas. Let me carefully restate that. To be free of ideas of your own that are not needed, not serving you, and not appropriate. It's not that little Jimmy in 5th grade thought you were a jerk. It's that you agreed with little Jimmy to a degree that hurts you. So it's your own thoughts that you want to clean out the clutter. What the hell little Jimmy thought is absolutely irrelevant. He's long gone. You probably haven't spoken to him for 40 or 50 years. Why should he have an influence on your life? Well, the answer is he doesn't have any influence whatsoever. But your thoughts that took place at that point, that took root, if you like, at that point, and have now flourished and fruited, mean that you are hurting yourself because of something this little Jimmy character put in place, and you bought into it. Okay, well, I hope you get the model, and I hope you, like me, you're very excited that Per Schiottz is going to be with us. He'll be right here in this room, where we're in a loft, actually. He'll be right here in the loft beside me, talking to everybody, and then training you one by one or in small groups, however you can manage it, however you want to make it. And I think it's going to produce some of the most amazing transformations in a person's life. You know, we can do trauma, counseling, coaching, and all sorts of other transformational processes. But there's almost nothing as transformational as doing the freedom tools and fixing your point of view about yourself. Okay, hope you got the message. I'm going to, well, I think I'll stop the recording, but then I'm going to sort of pick up for chat and messages if anybody has questions and things. Okay, so let me just, as I say, stop the recording. We're all good. Thanks very much for listening.